Greetings. Thank you for coming to our webinar, Keeping Your State House Accountable. I'm excited that you can join us, and I have Michael here as a co-panelist. Say hello, Michael.
Good morning. Hello.
So we'll be talking about legislator scorecards. That is the topic of our webinar today. And let's see, here is our intro slide. So Michael, do you want to say something about yourself?
Sure. I'm Michael O'Brien. I'm the founder and principal of Mob Advocacy, a state and local government relations firm. We represent organizations all over the country at the state and local level. And I've been working with Karen for many years. I believe we both were founded in the same year. So with that,
true story. So yes, I am the founder of LegiNation. So we make BillTrack50, which is one of the things we'll be showing you today. And that's a picture of me standing in front of a wall that coincidentally has the BillTrack50 logo on it. What a happy coincidence. All right, so let's go ahead and dive in. Today we will be talking about what a scorecard is and what it's used for. We will talk about some of the legalities of who's allowed to use them. And then we will go ahead and just make a scorecard all the way from scratch so you can see how it's done. So we're hoping that we can get through the discussion and demo in 30 minutes. We will see about that, but that is our best intention. And then that will leave us a good 15 minutes for discussion so that you can ask any questions. But please do feel free to ask questions along the way. That's no problem. The webinar is meant to be interactive. It's meant to be for you. So Michael will be fielding those questions the best he can and stopping us to discuss whatever questions you've got as we move along. This slide presentation will be mailed to you because you'll notice there's a bunch of links I don't actually click on as we go through here. So this is meant to be a reference for you after we are done. So starting with the on-demand webinar, we will put it here on this link. And then there's a bunch of other examples as we go through here that you'll be able to explore on your own. So we're just going to kind of go through the high level stuff. And if you are interested or you need to watch this again or you need more instructions, we've got lots of links in this slide presentation for you to use for further reference. All right, Michael, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Let's do this. So first, what is a scorecard?
A scorecard is a tool that allows advocacy groups or organizations to let legislators know what they think of legislation. There's scorecards will rank bills positively, negatively, and then usually it's then made public so legislators can see how your organization views legislation, and your stakeholders can see how your organization views legislation. More importantly, it then shows your stakeholders who supports you as an organization and who is against you as an organization. That score, that legislator score is the key part of the value of a scorecard.
So we've got a couple different angles we'll discuss for how that score can be applied, how it can be leveraged. But yes, exactly. So a ranking of legislators based on bills and your opinion of them. So we've got here a link from Ballotpedia, an index of scorecards across the states. So you can look at your state and see which scorecards are published. And if you do a scorecard and it's not listed, Ballotpedia would be happy to add it. But that's a great example to go look at and see how lots of people are doing their scorecards. But to be very brief, ranking legislators based on their votes on key bills. So I just grabbed one of the examples from the Ballotpedia link to show you. So this is the Colorado Union of Taxpayers, and this is their little scorecard that they publish. So they've got the key legislation that they thought was important and what they thought about it, and then they've got the ranking of everybody and an actual score plus, you know, a little bit of other information. So this is their scorecard, and then they do it again for the House. So, you know, this is a good example of how these happen. All right, so that is one example scorecard. Give you the idea of what we're talking about. You know, are you happy? Are you sad? Did you like it or not? You can give people letter grades. Lots of different approaches. All right, so moving on to how you might use them. The obvious way is so that you can identify your allies, your people on the fence who maybe just need a little bit more information to tip over to becoming an ally, or somebody who's voted the right way on many bills and might be a great person to potentially sponsor your bill. So a great way to find allies and also to identify your enemies, just in case you don't know who they are. Also, to inform advocates, so people who believe in your same mission, helpful for them to know how their people voted on bills come election time. They can decide if they would like to vote for their legislator to stay in office or not. So that can be a super useful thing. And then obviously to pressure legislators by saying our advocates are going to vote based on how you do against this agenda of bills. So by publishing it, you really are able, and then getting your advocates to call their legislators and let them know that this is important to them and they're going to vote based on this, then that will apply pressure to legislators. And I have a case study linked here about somebody who created a scorecard and was able to apply a bunch of pressure. So Michael, would you like to explain some non-traditional uses?
Yeah, first I'd like to echo that pressuring legislators. I don't think that there is a more powerful advocacy tool out there, especially if you're a known organization, than scorecards. Legislators want to know where people stand, but they're still often not publicly accountable, and scorecards make sure legislators are publicly accountable. They really let your advocates know, and so many people vote based on kind of not necessarily single bill, but kind of with like-minded organizations, and so those scorecards are definitely valuable. On the non-traditional uses, opposition research. If you're trying to see what organizations you're typically against, seeing what they're advocating on behalf of, which would generally be opposite of your organization. On the candidate side, it's an easy way to see how candidates are, potential candidates are voting on issues that are important to your platform. Why are you running? Well, I'm running because this person is against everything that we stand for. PAC validation, and I think as a former PAC leader, I think this is important. So many times I was asked by our PAC members, why are we supporting this this member? Why are we supporting that member? And this a scorecard gives you an easy calculus to say, hey, look, these are people that are supporting us. These are people that it's important to keep in office, and that's why the PAC is supporting these individuals. And fly-in support. Fly-ins are a hectic time. That's when you're bringing your advocates to Washington, D.C. or your state capital to talk to legislators, and they are very hectic. It's often hard to get information easily and quickly to your members. Having a scorecard makes it easy for them to just kind of brush up before they go in to talk to a member of the legislature or Congress. Where do they stand on your issues, and where can they apply pressure or say thank you for being a supportive member. So those are three more non-traditional, non-public uses for scorecards, but all very important as well.
Right. As you mentioned, it's always nice to say where you want to say thank you, in addition to where you disagree with how somebody voted. So it's important to have not just one bill in mind, but all the bills that affect your area of interest, so that you can make sure that you are nice and grateful where that's appropriate. All right, so that is how you might use one of these scorecards after you take the time to make it. And then I've got some example scorecards that we can look at. So each one of these is a link that you can explore, and I gave you kind of a little scavenger hunt items in here so that you can look at the scorecards with a couple different things in mind as sort of the scorecard game. I hope you enjoy. And so let's take a look at this Kentucky one as our first example. So this is Forward Kentucky, a liberal group in Kentucky trying to move things in a liberal direction. And they've picked a group of bills that they thought were progressive and decided that they supported or didn't support certain bills. So this is where they put their score, and this is basically like rating it like a movie, 3 stars out of 5, 5 stars out of 5, or negative for bills that they didn't like. And then they also put the bills in categories so that you could see what matters to you. So they are covering the entire progressive agenda, but then, you know, if you are mostly interested in civil rights, you could look at just the civil rights bills, for example. All right. So that is the list of bills that they did. And then once they rated them and said if the sponsors should get extra credit for having sponsored it, then here is the sum of their scores. So they had 4 people who voted the right way the whole time, and then on down the ranks, right? And so as the viewer, I could see how my person did. I could see how my party did. I could look at how an individual did to see if I want to run against them. All of those kinds of things that we were just talking about, especially because this is interactive. If I was at a fly-in, I can click on the person I'm about to visit and remind myself how they voted on the key bills that I cared about. So that is pretty helpful too, and what their score is in each individual category. All right, so that is how you would use that, and then you could see how the parties did. You could narrow it down to say, well, just show me education, and it'll recalculate and show you just education scores, so that you can, you know, look at the topic you care about, and then look at it district by district so that you can see where your district falls along the spectrum, which also can be helpful for a little bit of context. So this is a great example scorecard that you can explore. They also have our pretty version of the scorecard. So if you're not so charts and graphs oriented, we also have a version where it's much more people and picture oriented, so that you can say, you know, look at the people instead and have it be a presentation and have the different scores set up that way. All right, so that was one live demo of a scorecard as published by BillTrack50. And you can explore these other ones if you're interested in seeing a federal one or some other ones. You can see also what these people were attempting to do with their scorecards. Michael, anything you want to add before we move on to the next section?
I just want to point out we started with a PDF version, which was great for the time, but just to point out, the interactive piece of it is really great to engage your stakeholders. It really allows them to learn more about key issues that they care about, allows them, you know, you could even take action, you know, kind of a thank and spank right from your scorecard. It's a great opportunity to really engage your stakeholders, and then continue to send that message to legislators saying, hey, look, you know, you took the vote. You know, oftentimes grassroots are focused on getting the vote across the finish line, but then once the vote happens, kind of a thank and spank, hey, you know, we're really disappointed that you voted this way, or thank you for supporting this. You know, I know it was a hard vote. So those pieces are critical to your grassroots advocacy success. You know, it's
absolutely,
grassroots advocacy doesn't stop when the bill's signed. It continues on long beyond the bill signing is done.
Roger that. So yeah, the interactive is nice. Obviously, if you're just publishing a newsletter, then, you know, some sort of visual that you can grab is also good. All right, so moving on, who can use a scorecard? So obviously, as an organization, there's a couple questions. So whether you're a C4 or a C3, you're going to need to treat your scorecard slightly differently. And Michael, what is the difference between a C4 and a C3?
So a C3 is a traditional nonprofit covering, education, some kind of social good. A C4 is a political nonprofit. And generally, so having worked in both areas, a C3, you can't engage in election politics. So your advocacy has to stick to issues. And scorecards, while kind of close to the line of electoral politics, they're still very issue oriented. You're still dealing with people as elected officials, and how they vote on your issues. So you're supporting elected officials based on their votes, or you're opposing elected officials based on their votes. You're not supporting or opposing candidates. A C4 can take a scorecard and use that in the electoral side, and so they can, promote candidates based on those scores. So they can play more in the electoral side. So especially as things get close to election time, that's something to be aware of. Make sure you're dealing with elected officials if you're C3, issues, not people. So stick to those issues and not candidates. C4, you can deal with both the elected official side and the candidate side.
Right. One of the keys is for a C3, which many of you may be, you can't call out specific legislators. So you can have your scorecard come up, you can show who voted the right way most of the time, but it has to be in the context of how everybody voted. And so you're leaving it to your viewer to draw conclusions. You're not highlighting somebody. You can't put a star next to somebody. You can't call out individual legislators. As long as you're listing all of the legislators and your descriptions of the bills are straightforward and not loaded with opinion and loaded language, I want to say, keep it sounding pretty factual about how this is going to impact the thing you care about, and then put in your scores, and then just let the viewer come to their conclusions. That about right, Michael?
That's absolutely correct. Good points.
All right. So I've got a link here to a great deep dive about like what C3s and C4s can do, is what counts as electioneering and where you're going over the line. So, you don't want to run afoul of the IRS. So do keep that in mind. But as a C3, obviously consult your own lawyer, but on the whole, if you keep it pretty straightforward, you are showing just the facts, how they voted, all added up. It's just math. And so you should be on the right side of the line if you are reasonably careful. All right. And I found a very inspirational quote. Never be afraid to raise your voice for honesty and truth and compassion. So this is to encourage you to get out there and make a difference. Make your scorecard, change the world. Okay. Michael, are you ready to actually make a scorecard?
Sure.
Okay, good stuff. So 5 easy steps. You're rating legislation, so you've got to identify the bills that you think are key and then rate them. So you say whether they're good or bad, and then you make the scorecard. You do any fine tuning you need to do, and then you share it. Now, remember, you might want to keep this internal just to remind yourself of who was your friend, or just because you're hunting for allies. So you don't have to share it, but there's a lot of power in sharing these, so we encourage it. All right, so here we go. I'm going to attempt a live demo. Always an exciting time. So I was going to do B legislation, neonicotinoid bills are example.
My old world.
All right. So I'm going to pull over BillTrack50 here. and I will log in. And of course, I already have an account. As a smart consumer, I know BillTrack50 is a great idea. So this is my account. I'm going to search for neonicotinoid. Boop. And of course, if you don't have any bill sheets yet, then you'll just show up on this screen, and that's fine. So you put your search terms in here, and here are all the bills. I can go scrolling through here. For this demo, I think I would like to do Minnesota. So I'm going to narrow it down to that. And I've got some bills. So I'm going to go ahead and say that looks good. And I'm going to do for the bees. All right. So here's my bill sheet. And I have already made a template that I like for scorecards. So I'm going to apply that. So these are the columns that I find useful. If the bills had any votes, if the bills had sponsors, of course, what happened with the bill is helpful. You know, so these are just the columns I like for scorecards. You can set up whatever columns you like, but here's our different bills. So I can look at this Omnibus Environment and Natural Resources bill real quick, and it is a monster. All right, so I'm going to highlight my search terms to figure out which parts of these are bee related. All right, so they are, let's see, $350,000 in the first year from a trust fund to quantify the occurrence of neonicotinoid insecticides in Minnesota's surface water. Okay, so I can decide, yeah, tracking this seems like a good use of money to me. So I can decide that I like this bill and I'm going to support it. So I'll just do that. Great. And then Environment and Natural Resources Trust Fund. I've already read that bill and I know that that is one that I really like. Okay. And then this is the version of this that actually passed. So this was the House version. It was the Senate version that actually went through. So that is a support as well. Great. And then I've got this one that didn't actually have any votes on it, but I really thought that this was a good idea because that is how we're going to really make a change. So I would like to say that I support it just to be able to share it with my group of people who care about my issue as well. All right, so now I've created my list of bills. I've identified the bills I thought were important, and I've done the second step, which is I rated the bills. Pretty easy. So now I'm going to go back and say scorecards, and I'm going to make a scorecard. And I'm going to say that I am doing a Minnesota scorecard. All right. And then I choose which bills I want. So I'm going to say that I want the, oh, what did I call it for the bees? There it is. Okay, and I'll just add those bills in. Now I could also go to the legislation tab and just type in the bill numbers one by one, no problem. So you don't have to actually make a bill sheet. If you just have 3 bills and you already know what they are, you don't have to do that research step. All right, so now it's come across, and the bills that I gave a rating to have the score that I gave it. And so I'm going to sort this by the ones I rated. So here's the ones that I rated. And then for the fees one, I am going to edit this. And in addition to giving it 3 points for voting on it, I'm going to say that these people who sponsored it, they are right-thinking people. They get 3 bonus points for having put their name on that. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. All right. And so now I can see my summary. Here are the people who supported the bees and people who are less supportive of the bees. These are people that just are leaving the bees on their own. And that's it. That's what you do to make a scorecard. Any questions about that process, Michael?
No, it is so easy, especially if you're already tracking legislation, to just convert that over to a scorecard. I think it's great. A great tool externally, a great tool internally. I know it's a tool that I use with my clients. to kind of show them who their allies are. I think it's a great tool all around.
Great. So if you need to tweak anything, you've got this edit. You can override the bill name. You can put in comments to explain to your readers or your members why, or your PAC members, why you thought this bill was important or what the impact would be. You could link to an entire page or a PDF that you have put out about this bill if you want people to have even more information. And then as you saw with our example, you can put the bills in categories, which is pretty easy. So those are some of the easy tweaks you can make. You can also tweak the appearance of the bill with a bunch of different options on the Manage tab. So you can put your logo on it. Ford Kentucky have their logo on it. You can say, you've got a bunch of other tweaks you can make. So those are some of the advanced options, which I'm happy to walk through with anybody who needs them. But that puts us right at the 30 minutes we were hoping for. So let me go ahead and close my demo, unless, Michael, you think, is there anything that I forgot to show?
I don't think so.
All right, so I guess I did forget to mention that we do highlight who sponsored the bills that you thought were important. So those would appear down here. Representative Boehner did not, but all right. So go ahead and close this out. So this is a little 5-minute video showing me doing that. So when you get the slideshow, if you want to see that walkthrough again so you can do it for yourself, that will be available in here as well. All right, so thank you for listening. I hope you found this to be somewhat helpful. Perhaps I showed you a few things you didn't know, or we discussed a few uses of scorecards you hadn't thought of. We are now taking questions. And Michael, did I leave you with any mysteries to be solved?
I'm at an unfair advantage because I've both used these and more kind of the traditional scorecards.
I'm curious if you would publish, if you were managing a PAC, obviously we update the votes every day so you can see things developing over time. Would you wait until the session is over before you put it up, or would you put it up during the year?
So we published internally quarterly newsletters, but also had a PAC website. So if I were using it, I would use it even during session for a number of reasons. One, we also did fly-ins and advocacy days at the state capitol. So having that in a place that's easy for our PAC members to see is important. But also with sponsors and having, not knowing who's going to talk to a legislator, having that information out there for people to be able to prepare without them having to, call me and say, hey, can I get a file on this legislator? I know we're going to be at the same place at the same time, and I want to know that. They could go to the PAC website and pull that off, and I think that's valuable. I know our PAC website newsletters were always looking for material, and this was great. This would be great engaging material for that.
That is so true. I hadn't thought about that, but that's a great way for someone who knows that they're going to see a legislator. Either they're going to a town hall or they're going to a party where they'll be at, or whatever event. To dive in and take a look and see what they might want to chat with them. That's a perfect example of why you might want to go ahead and put it up while the session is still going on. Nice. All right. So if we don't have any questions, then we are going to go ahead and wrap up. So thank you again for coming. Hopefully you found this was useful. You will get an email from us tomorrow with a link to the webinar, as well as a link to this scorecard presentation, the slides. so that you can explore any of these topics you wanted to read more about. Hopefully those additional links will be helpful for you. So thanks everybody for coming, and do you want to say goodbye, Michael?
Goodbye, and thanks for coming. I hope you found it helpful.
All right, thanks everybody. Bye-bye.